I have not had her on the show since the pandemic, right before the Twitch era when I was trying to figure out this freelancing thing. And since then, we kind of disappeared from each other's radar. And then but as I'm approaching episode 1000, I'm bringing back a few favorite guests here and there. And so, Jenn Taylor Campbell, it is. How you doing?
Yay! I'm great. I'm awesome. I'm still mom of 18.
Yes.
And we were together at the very beginning of the pandemic. We had very similar viewpoints about the situation. I think we were relatively accurate. I mean, I want to say spot on, but
Well, here's the thing. How do I put this? I really don't care about being right or spot on about it anymore. What the pandemic taught me more than anything else wasn't, it taught me a little bit about what I would do, because there were points I took
yeah.
stands too.
hmm
There are points I took stands as well. But by and large, what I was much more interested in is how everybody else reacted to the pandemic.
Which, yeah, I mean, we could have an entire podcast just on that. Unfortunately, it's over, but there's definitely some aftermath. There's fallout from it.
Oh, sure. I mean, okay, so for me, so personally, it created my ninth rule. Would you like to hear my ninth rule?
I would love to hear your ninth rule.
Detach from all outcomes.
Mm.
So the big thing is, so like I said, folks, I've been pretty open about some things. I've said it in the past. I wasn't crazy about the whole vaccine craze. And the reason I wasn't crazy about it was very simple. It wasn't because I didn't think the vaccine would or wouldn't work. I have lived in an era of opiates. I've lived in an era of teachers giving students antidepressant pills. I have lived through an era of watching all kinds of drugs being injected into the population in various ways with unpredictable side effects. I did not want to be part of that game.
That was me too. It wasn't about it working or not working. I didn't think that there was enough information, and I wasn't willing to be a test subject.
Yeah, and that's and I don't think that's an irrational answer. Now, again, and I've also said this too, and I'll say this here again. If you did it because you thought it was for the right reasons, I'm not going to knock you for it.
No,
because again, everybody has to make their own decisions on that, and I'm not gonna. I didn't care about that, but what I cared about was, but what I realized about the pandemic, the nature of how things are covered and looked at. The world tries to give you an idea of how the world actually is, right? And by the world, I mean mainstream media, I mean society, I mean our leaders. And I realized very early on in the pandemic that my leaders have no integrity. So it became very hard. And one of the side effects, the aftermath of this now is a lot of things that had credibility lost it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because when you look at the information today versus what we knew then, there is definitely credence to our point of view. Right. So, and that's just the way it is. Now, that doesn't, again, take away how devastating COVID was. It doesn't take away like some of the other things that have happened. But I don't attach myself to an idea that there's a magic bullet that's going to fix everything. What I attach myself to is the idea that I'm very wait and see. I want to see how something works, how something plays out, and that can take years. That can honestly take years before you truly know one way or the other if something works. So taking the emotion out of it, I detach from all outcomes. But I also mean, and the other reason that's important to understand too is this. If someone believes in an idea strongly enough, it doesn't matter what it is, it's super hard to convince somebody once they've bought into the idea to change their mind. It doesn't matter what the idea is, right? If you're convinced it's a good idea, then that's it. That's all there is to it. There's no coming back. And we all have biases that way. But if I detach myself from these outcomes, right, I'm much more prone to hear out another person's point of view. And even if I don't agree with it at the end of the day, I might understand it. And if I understand, yeah, and that's And that is a far better place to be in with people
Hmm.
than to be so certain of an idea that you're absolutely 100% correct and everybody else is wrong no matter what.
Right. I think
Right?
we saw a lot of that in a different way. I think, I've always said money doesn't change a person, it reveals them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have to say the same for a situation like this. When push comes to shove and we're in a situation that's scary and unknown, it doesn't always change us. I mean, I think it can change us, but I think it
Absolutely.
reveals us. And we were a country still, in lots of ways, very divided. And the divisiveness is not the issue for me. It's the how people were going about sharing that. And so it was an interesting learning experience with people, with companies, in how they spoke to other people or how they showed up to share their perspective. And when it's absolute and you're wrong, not only are you wrong, you're a whole bunch of expletives if you don't believe them, Right.
Yeah.
Then that's so close-minded, and I think we saw a lot of that. And it was a good time to unfollow some things.
Yes.
Interesting things happen. Like, okay, I've had 3 email addresses, and I had a Hotmail address first, and I've kept it because, you said I have 18 kids, and it was the email address I had when I adopted the kids because I don't
Yeah.
use my Hotmail address anymore. Um, but I've kept it because if any of the biological parents ever want to get in touch with me, I want it to forward. So I forwarded it years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had, an email address for several years that was just a Gmail address, pretty low key. And then I have the one that's based off of, my website presence and stuff like that. And I've had that one for years, but I can look at the last 20 plus years. So it was super interesting. A lot of businesses folded, which was a great time to fold. A lot of people like me went, wait a minute, this is an opportunity for me to decide if I want to do something different. If I do, I want to change it. And
Mm-hmm.
I changed it. It was a really great opportunity for us to do things differently. And a lot of businesses and people that were trying to kind of rebrand and redo things, I knew that was happening when I started getting emails from my Hotmail address. Like, I knew how long ago I had connected with a person or a company based on what email address
Nice.
they sent me correspondence to, because I have that broken into time chunks. And
Yes.
so I knew if something came from Hotmail, this was someone that I got my email, like, I haven't used that email for over a decade. So I knew that that was pre 10 years ago, and they're like re-downloading their list. And I mean, this something similar happened to me where I used a different platform. A lot of places, like I said, went out of business and changed.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so I had to change some of the platforms, including who I was sending email newsletters to, and which I do a few times a year, but still I do it. And I downloaded my CSV, but there were potentially some people on that CSV, even though it was a CSV that I was currently using, so it didn't have people that had unsubscribed, but potentially switching over kind of sent things to a couple of people that didn't realize they were still on mine, and it gave them a chance to unsubscribe. So I gave a lot of grace in that situation because we were all kind of stammering through figuring out what things look like for each of us
Mm-hmm.
through the pandemic and on the other side of it. But it was really interesting to kind of watch people rally their businesses, rally who they were, go back to some basics, redefine how they were doing things, change how they were doing things, which we both, I think, did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how they showed up in their stances. Um, I know where I stand politically, but I don't talk about it much on social media.
Yeah, I have openly said I'm politically an atheist, and and again, this for me, it's really simple. What I look for in politics, I look for in my relationships. I actually had this really interesting epiphany about this. We as a people, and like if I were to change one thing about the world, one thing, it would be that would people would recognize their own self worth because
Mhm.
because it would change, it would dictate, it would change how companies, politicians, and leaders treat people. Overnight, it would be the simplest, easiest way to change. But obviously, what I realized too is that's everybody. That's a personal journey for everybody. You got to figure out what you're worth in this world and what you're willing to fight for. That is, if that does not make me sound like a freelancer, I don't know what else.
Right, exactly. Right.
Right. But the thing is, I apply that to everything. I apply that to the people in my friendships. I apply that to my relationships. I apply that to now political. Now again, I have a standard, a very simple one. Are you going to show up and do what you say you're going to do?
Right.
Do you know how many politicians don't fit that? Don't even remotely come close to fitting that
Right.
bar? And it doesn't matter what the party is. It really doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter the party, it doesn't matter the stance. Like, this is what I'm looking at. And when you can't keep your word, if things, again, life shit happens, change, are you transparent enough to be at ownership and accountability? And by the way, this is a standard I hold with everybody. It's not a politician, it's a human being. I decided to humanize my politicians a long time ago. And when I did that, I found that, okay, so the question then I asked is, would I buy a car from any of these guys? Just buy a car. No. So,
right. But I think when people post about it, if I posted the election was coming up and I was posting who I followed, it's just posting who I followed. I think it was the absolute, like, this is who I follow, and if you don't, then you are not a good person and I hate you sort of mentality that came out.
Oh yeah, high school.
That's what bothered me. Yeah, did we all go back to 7th grade? That's what I felt.
Well, okay, so this is what's, I have a theory about this. I've talked about this in a few other shows. This is my theory. Once upon a time, I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying it didn't have its problems. But we had a standardized idea of how the world worked. Now, over the last 2 decades, I would say, I think the pandemic sped this up big time.
Yeah.
But I think for the last 2 years, that standard has been slowly eroded to such a point now, there is no standard on anything, really. Yeah. So what happens here is, okay, since again, going back to something I'm saying, I don't have my standard for a politician is basically deals with integrity. Doesn't it? I don't. If one exists, I don't know who it is. Okay. So there's no, if our leadership has no integrity, no transparency, no ownership, that means nobody knows how the fuck the world works. Nobody. So since there's not a clear answer of how the world works, the policies that maybe what kind of world we want to live in, what people tend to do is, since there is no clear answer anymore, right? There's no consensus of what that answer is, or at least a consensus to a standard which we all live by. What happens is we break down to the next thing. Well, what's everybody else is doing? And what everybody else is doing is, okay, I'm going to look at what values do I value, and which group follows those values. And that's the camp I'm in. And if you're not part of that camp, you're the quote unquote enemy. Even though I mean, it's horseshit, but that's basically, I think, where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It definitely changed things. It definitely revealed a lot. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, lots of businesses ended that. It was a tough situation for sure. And yeah, so
well, some businesses thrived during that time.
They did.
Because again, some of them were ready for it. Some of them were ready for what was coming. Like, if there's any, I mean, again, one of the other side effects is it taught, like, one of the biggest lessons, I don't care who you are, right? You shouldn't just go by the standard status quo for how prepared you are. You got to prepare. You have to have in your own way, kind of like a plan somehow, some way.
Yeah, right. Some plan.
Right. Even if that plan goes to complete shit in the first 5 minutes, a clear vision of where to go definitely staves off a lot of fear and panic. I've personally found this. So I like that's what I've learned. Like those are some of the bigger lessons I learned in the pandemic. I learned who a lot of people really are,
Yeah.
and I've also significantly grown as I have become a different person than when I started.
Right. Right.
Right,
Right.
and
Yeah.
right, I'm currently in Calgary, Alberta, just to give you an idea where I'm
Okay.
at.
Okay.
Right, so when this podcast breaks 1,000, which isn't that far away actually,
Right.
um, I'm going to take my show on the road. So what I care about now is I really like as a businessman, creative person, telling my story and helping other people tell theirs. That
Right.
is my basic direction now. So what does a guy like me want? Adventure and connection. So in the last year I've been back in Calgary, I've tried to reach out to a lot of old friends. Almost now, it's not a complete batting average of zero, but it is only a very tiny amount of friends have I been able to keep in contact with. A lot of
Hmm.
them have basically given me the cold shoulder, and or right, and like again, not because they're necessarily being deliberately pricks, but just the way the life has gone here is people have, how do I describe it? People have gone into their little villages here and they have
Hmm.
stayed in their comfort zone and they don't want to venture out so quickly or so readily right now. And I think that's a very Canadian thing, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a very Canadian thing. But I was talking to a buddy that's current, like came back here for a very brief time, and he ended up in Nova Scotia. And the reason he ended up in Nova Scotia is the exact same reason I'm going on the road. No one's connecting here. Why am I here if no one's going to connect? Right? It's like why? And I understand because I can work anywhere, and because of what I'm doing, I can literally do that. So
Anywhere.
why would I stay in a place that isn't giving me the kind of joy I'm looking for?
Right. And the opposite happened here with us. We were planning a few years ago to move out of, we're in Reno, Nevada. Um, and it was challenging because 13 out of 18 kids live here. My husband's two brothers and a sister live here. So moving away meant going away from where most of the kids were and potentially not living near any of them. But it was also the period in our lives where all but one of our kids are adults and we could do what we wanted, where we have dedicated our lives to our kids for so long. And we looked at that and through the pandemic realized that that's not happening. And
Mhm.
and then being really okay with it.
Yeah,
Which, so I think those things can go
sure.
many ways, right? So like I'm glad that we're staying here now, and where before I was really ready to leave. And it's the same thing. And why? Because we made changes here outside of our kids. We made changes here that made a significant difference that we were able to do during the pandemic.
Yeah,
So I think you have to really figure out what do you want and are you in a place that is offering that, and if you are not, then maybe it's time to go somewhere else because that's always a possibility.
well, that's where I'm at. Like, what I
Right.
want is adventure and connection, right? That's what I want. And for
Right.
considering who again, I am telling stories and letting people tell theirs.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm in a position where it's like I need to be around people, and I don't necessarily need the largest circle in the world either. But I network. It's what I do.
Hmm.
So if I'm in a place that doesn't really want to network or anything, why am yeah,
Right.
why am I here?
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at, right? It's not like again, I'm not looking at it. I'm past the point where I'm taking it personally anymore. Like I'm right. It's
Right.
just I was at a poetry festival on the weekend. So I did my first live poem of one of the books one of the books I'm working on. I did it first ever at a poetry slam. The first time I ever did that. It was kind of cool.
Hmm.
And but the thing is, as much as I enjoyed that, as much as I enjoyed doing that, um, what I saw a friend there I've been trying to have just coffee with for a year, right? And they made it very clear they weren't interested.
Mm.
right? Whether they realize it or not, they made it entirely clear, like they just don't want to do it. Now, again, there's no crime in that. I can't say like again, this isn't oh woe is me. You don't want to do it, okay? But that is the common answer across the board. Then why would I want to stay?
Right.
Right? Because it makes no sense to. Right?
Yeah, so then you make changes.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I've been doing. I'm getting my American passport situation remedied like this month. Next, and then in 2 months, I'm going to pick a state, because I will say this: the one thing that I both love and hate about the United States in particular is their standards are so up and down, and sometimes you can use that to your advantage. Like, for example, a driver's license. There are 3 states in your union that don't even require you to be an American citizen to get your driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
That's an amazing little truth.
Yeah.
God bless America. Right? God bless America. That's all you got to say about that, right?
Right.
You're laughing because it's silly, but that's the world we live in.
Right.
And
right.
so, I mean, one of the things, I've become a lot more of a businessman. And I say this, like, if there are rules to be taken advantage of, why not? Right? And then so I'll get my license. I'll get my license. I'll be looking for a van probably shortly thereafter.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So, and then I'm going to hit 1,000. I thought I'd be a lot closer to than I am. It's going to be probably because this month. So my side gig, I work at a hockey arena and like an NHL hockey arena. This is playoff month, so I don't really know what my schedule is going to be like this month. So it's going to be weird. So I might only do like 10 streams this month. Like, you're the first one. I have one more this week, and that's it. And then next week, I'll when I know my schedule's set in stone, I'll figure out next week. And then like I'm going week to week for the next few weeks until I know for sure how some things play out, right? But I'm going to hit 1,000 probably June or July. Probably it looks like July. And when I hit 1,000. Now, I want to do. I might do a few after 1,000. It might not be a perfect 1,000. I think for sure I'm doing 1,002. I might be doing for sure 1,002. But I'm projecting probably somewhere between 1,010 and 1,020 episodes.
Okay.
Like then, so there's an event here called When Words Collide. I'm doing a talk there called the Freelance Mindset, which I'll tell you, which we'll get a little bit into before this episode's up. And the last 5 minutes of that presentation is me singing "Carry On, Wayward Son" by Kansas.
Okay.
I'm going out the door, and then I'm just going out the door, and I'm heading off into the adventure. I know an idea where I'm going to go. I know what I kind of want to do, how to get started. I'll be booking that scheduled tour, whatever the case may be, in June. Like, I'll start really seriously booking it. But I know where I kind of want to go, how I kind of want to do this. And then for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be probably living in a van in both countries, just meeting. I've met some incredible people. Like, again, since we've talked, 300 to nearly 1,000 episodes, right? That's a lot of amazing people to meet.
700 people. Yeah. My podcast hit 6 years old on May 4th. So in about a month from this recording. And it's gone through some iterations. And sometimes I think, I don't know what my total episodes are, honestly, but it's not 1,000. I still do one a week, kind of. You know, I mean, like, if somebody doesn't show up, I skip it. I hit the point with the podcast where if I had been able to budge past the top 5% in the world, I've been at the top 5% of the world for like the last few years. Yeah. And if I had been able to budge past that, I think I would be more dedicated to making sure every week, like if somebody didn't show up, because I go live like similarly to you. Yeah. And so if I didn't show up today, like no podcast today, or you have to do something different. You have to figure it out on the fly. You have to have stuff that's sitting and waiting. And I wanted it to be as seamless and easy as possible. And had my listening percentage, my rating gone up, I probably would have made sure, like, oh, if this person doesn't show up today, I'm doing a solo episode because I want to make sure every week consistently. But I've kind of in the past few months just been like, Yeah, if they don't show up, I get a break this week, right?
And that's totally a fair. That's totally a fair perception.
And I think you have to like just I haven't stopped doing it. I don't want to stop doing it. I'm booked up 6 to 9 months in advance. I don't have to try to look for people. I mean, there's all kinds of good top 5% is great. Um, but I've met some of the most amazing people through my podcast. People
Mhm.
that are like, I love these people. So I totally understand what you mean by that. Um, and I'm glad the pandemic changed things where you're like, oh, I want to do it. We moved into our RV a year ago. This week is 1 year. So I am in a 31-foot class pool.
And this is Anita Stewart, Anita, Jen, Anita. I don't know if you two know each other or not. I'm almost, my guess is you do, but I don't know.
Okay.
Right. No guesses break time. Yeah. So Anita, I feel the same way. No guesses break time. I kind of feel the same way, Miss Anita. For me, it's a little different. I realized that my big mouth was my greatest weapon, but that was what I realized. I figured out the formula. Like, okay, so last week I had for the week I had 1,600 downloads. So
Okay.
so I'm doing pretty good, right? Not like that's pretty. Those are solid numbers.
Right. Right.
Right. So what I think I figured out the formula for the correct amount of episodes to do, how to, and again, I've been doing this for such a long, prolific time, and I enjoy doing it. That's the other thing too.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's a big part of my brand identity. So again, telling stories and letting people tell theirs. So,
right.
So for me now, when I go on the road, it might be more like 1 or 2 a week for a little while until I figure it out, until I figured this out.
Right.
But yeah, no, like but the thing is, like for me, I with people, when someone no shows, it depends on when they no show. Like if they tell me a couple days before, like, hey, I can't make it, I'll find another guest. If the day of the show happens and they no show, it depends on why. Right. Right. Like for me, like because I again, I just did this to somebody else. I actually apologize, but I haven't heard back from them yet because I forgot I was supposed to be on a show on the 28th because I've been doing client work and get caught up in all my stuff, and I didn't look at my schedule until later in the day. It's like, oh shit, I was supposed to do this today.
Right.
And so a few days ago, I sent out an apology because it's on me. Again, this is my fault, not theirs. Right. So again, if they decide not to reply to me, that's their choice. I understand it. Right. But at least I'm doing the mea culpa that I own. It's my fault. Bare minimum. Right. I own. Right. So
and that doesn't always happen.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I had an individual that I booked for a show once, and I'll never forget this because it's kind of where I got to my turning point where I stopped taking stuff so personally. Was we set a date and time to his standard. He was supposed to come in last minute for a previous show, but had to cancel due to an emergency meeting for his company. Like he works for a theater company, which is cool. Again, he was coming in and try to do me a favor, and he couldn't do it. No problem. I asked if he wanted to come have a conversation later on down the line. He said, yeah, sure. We set up a date and time. So the day before, and I confirmed it that day. Like I confirmed it. So, but the day before, I contact him, say, hey, looking forward to this conversation, right? Because it's been about a month since I heard from him. And he was like, oh, I got meetings today, but it's on you because you didn't send a confirmation email. It's like, okay, now I'm just done with you. Like that was
I have mine automated. I know you got a confirmation email. I know you got a reminder email 48 hours before. I know you know how to find me. Like I make it so easy on myself and other people because I've streamlined the process after 6 years that if you didn't show up, it's not just not looking at your calendar. You also didn't look at your email.
Yeah.
Because I know what's being sent, right? So but I love doing it. So during the pandemic, one of the things that I thought about was ending the podcast. And I'm still doing it. Right.
Yep.
One of the things I think we realized was there are things in life that we want to do that we're not doing and why? Because sometimes there's a reason that you can't. One of them was moving full time into an RV. We don't travel, we're stationary, we're in our son's backyard. And at first
Hmm.
it was because, well, we didn't have an RV. But also the location is the hardest thing. And then our son, our son has a house that he owns. And at first we asked him and he said no. And then he looked at us one day and he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's move it in.
Yeah.
So we bought it and we renovated it and we've been in it for a year. Um, my husband had worked for the same company for a really long time and they treated him horribly. And
Yep.
in the pandemic, it got worse. He was an essential worker, right? So he never great. It was great. He didn't stop working. However, they cut his pay by in half, and it was less people and more work, and it was awful. It just went so sideways. It was not a good situation. And he got another job offer, and the job offer was for a little less, and I was like, do it, get out of this place. And it's, for someone whose mentality is that he's very committed to the place that he works and not burning bridges, that was very challenging for him to do, and he finally did it. I remember looking at him going, if you say no to this, we have a problem. Like, you and I have a problem, because you can't
Yeah.
keep working at the same place you're working at. You could sue them at this point. Like, I'm ready to talk to attorneys about this. So you leave, or you and I have a problem and I'm calling an attorney. And he did. He switched. It wasn't because I was like threatening him bodily
No.
harm or anything. Like,
No.
I said, this is how important this decision is. It's creating a problem in our relationship and in our family because of how they're treating you and your health and the hours you're working. So he quit, nervous to take a pay cut after he'd already been cut in half, and it ended up not being a pay cut. And he said to me the other day, and he just hit over a year. And he said to me the other day, I am so grateful that I work for a company where I'm not stressed anymore.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think we're afraid to make decisions. And what the pandemic taught was like, why are you waiting for something? If you have an opportunity to make a change, do it. And so he switched his job. We moved into an RV. We started homeschooling my daughter, who's in 7th grade now. She was in 4th grade when things shut down. And I was so discouraged. I'd homeschooled before, and I was so discouraged with the whole situation. And Nevada's the 50th state in the nation. We are the worst state to live in for schools. We're the worst state to live in for several reasons. But
Hmm.
schools are the worst in the United States. Just cross a border anywhere and you're in a better school district.
Which is
So,
scary because I've been to Arizona and it's not the greatest there either.
and that's one of the borders, right? I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we still homeschool. We've never stopped homeschooling. I started working online 7 years ago. I was a VA, and I never advertised. And you'd think in the pandemic, when so many places went online, that would be easier. And it was, I mean, I had a great job when the pandemic started, and I kept that great job. I worked for 2 different companies I really liked. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, basically, I was like, welcome to my party, everyone. I've been here for the last 5 years, 4 years, but that changed a lot. And when that changed and my husband's job changed, then where I looked at him and said, if you don't switch this job, we have a problem. Like, this is causing a problem.
Yep.
He looked at me and said, you're the happiest person I've ever met, but you don't do anything that fulfills you. You do everything you're supposed to do. But you don't do anything that's yours alone. And we had this amazing date night conversation. And so I was a birth assistant and a lactation consultant for 12 years, and I loved it. I loved it. And when
Yeah.
I moved to Reno, I didn't know a soul. My husband and I were going through a divorce, and he went to prison. And I had to go back and get a job that was set, because money for a doula and birth money it's not set hours and it's not set income. And I needed both of those to be more set. And so I gave up what I loved to work up to 4 jobs to take care of my kids. And then it whittled down over the years to 1 job, but I worked 2 jobs most of the time for the last 15 years, for about 15 years. So when we had this conversation almost 2 years ago, I'm like, oh, if I could do what I wanted, I would go back and do that again. And he's like, we weren't in the RV yet, but he said, well, we're going to 1 income and you're going back to school and you're going to do what you love. And I did. So I think for us, for our family, kind of as a whole, the pandemic taught us to not wait to do the things you really want to do. Yes, sometimes there are reasons that you can't do them or that you have to do them differently, but we buckled down on our finances hard to go to one income, because I was a full-time income. There were times I made more than he did. And we buckled down hard to go to one income for me to go back to school and have a job that doesn't consistently pay, with hours that are all over the place. And we love it because we made the decision to do it. I think when things are enough of what you want, you start to figure out ways to do them. And the pandemic made people scrappy. It made people like you and I hunker down and really figure out, what do I not like about this situation and about my life? And how could I change that? In what ways? Because we thought we were going to move and now we're here and happy about it. So it wasn't the moving that was the issue for us personally. No. It was the changing his job and me going back to school and going back to doing what I loved.
Yeah. Oh, that's totally it. Like,
and awesome.
Like, again, because that for you, the question was, what did you really want?
Right.
Right. For that was the question. For me, the question right now is, where do I belong? Right. And that's the question for me. And I'm going to be figuring that out. And it might just magically work out, maybe sooner than later. I don't know. Like, right. But at the same time, what I've learned in this endeavor, in this game, even if I do find, I realize this decision I've already made, even if I do find a place to go, at least until I get tired of it, I'm still going to make like long road trips to meet some really cool people and do some really cool, insane shit. Because again, if this is either the greatest midlife crisis of my life, or this is where I finally grow up, one or the other, right?
Both. But why wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah.
I'm talking from an RV in my son's backyard as a doula. You know what I mean? Like, it's, who cares? Like, live in a van, travel around.
Yeah, no. Look, I've legitimately gone to that point. Like, so here's the thing. I think, okay, so where I'm currently at, there's a bit of I think the other thing too is, like, this is one of the really good reasons to come back. I did come back here. I was finishing up some leftover business. Like actually, I have a shit ton of stuff I don't need, and I've been slowly dwindling it down. Now, again, the value of what's important to you, what you realize is once you have things in storage for a few years, you really don't value stuff the way you think you do. Right. So, like, for example, I got a pile of comic book boxes of comics I have not seen or read in years. There's a few of them I still want, but I don't need them.
Right.
So I'm going to get rid of them. So I got a little bit of that kind of business. I'm still meeting people. I'm connecting to new communities here, because again, the thing about here and now, like I said, I did the poetry festival on the weekend, right? So so my role has changed in that community. I'm teaching people how to be their best versions of themselves.
Right.
Right. Which is really, really, I'm enjoying that a lot, because for me, it's like, okay, I never question a person's talent. It's that ability to go out there and be the best version of themselves. And what I figured out with writing in general, specifically with writing, it's really about three things: who you are, who you want to be, and what do you give a shit about. That's it. It doesn't really matter what you write. Those are the stories you're telling. Right. Those are the stories you're telling. It doesn't matter what you're writing about. So, and I've noticed that this has translated into my freelancing, because when I started, when we were talking, I was worried about my mindset was not to fuck it up.
Oh, okay.
And that's the worst mindset to actually have when you freelance, right? You have to at some point. So for me, the turning point was about a year later. So I was doing temp jobs here and there just to make, like, and again, I'm not saying I still have a side gig. Like I said, I work at a hockey arena right now, right? But the reason why the hockey arena has been tolerable for me is it's fun. It's not a job I worry about, if that makes sense, right? It's not a job I worry about. I go in there, I can check my brain out, get a bit of a workout in, and meet some really interesting people because everybody goes here, which is the neatest thing about this place.
Right.
So, but for all that said, so I had this point, I got this temp job and I was fired 2 days into it for no whatever reason, right? And after I got fired, I had an epiphany. I had an epiphany. It's like, they're going to make your freelancing work. You haven't figured it all out yet, but it doesn't matter. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs, but it doesn't matter. You're going to make it work. That week, I made, up until this month, was the most financially lucrative week. Oh, not this month, last month. Up until last month, it was the most financially lucrative week I ever had as a freelancer. I made something like, I'll just say the number. It was $1,200 in a week. Just like it was like, talk about a confirmation of what you're saying, saying what it is.
Right.
Now, I had now for about a month and a half, I didn't make another, like, because that's how freelancing works. A month and a half, I didn't make a dime, but I knew, and that's when my confidence really started to build up. Right this minute, I have 3 stable freelance gigs. I'm writing a blog for a publisher. That's not ghostwriting it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing a video content for a individual who just needs someone to do some video editing. Mm-hmm. I'm hosting a show. And I do like an advertising business to highlight creatives and do their thing. And again, I've been getting hits on them. I'm working, when I'm done with you today, I'm going to have lunch. And then when I have done having lunch, I'm going to work on that client and get his stuff done. And that's my work day today. And I did, and I realized the more confident and more sure of myself I am, the more money I seem to make.
Yeah, crazy how that works.
I know it really is. It's one of those moments. I just realized it. It's like, it's all about your mindset.
Yep.
It's completely about your mindset.
Excuse me.
And I've talked to people making 6 figures as a freelancer. I've talked to people making like 5. Right. It's the same mindset. The range changes a little bit depending on what you're doing, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, because at the end of the day, whether the person making the 5-figure is still happy, they're doing what they love.
Right.
The person making 6-figure is happy, they're doing what they love.
Right.
And it's amazing and it's really fun to get in on those conversations because you're not dealing with the same kinds of self-doubt. Now you're looking at, how do I make it bigger? How do I shoot for the next cool thing I'm doing? And that is a rush. That's a very different kind of rush, and it's awesome.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So that's it. I think we need to have something on that more, but okay. Yeah.
No, it is. It's true. I think we're coming at the same problem from different angles, I guess, but same thing though. You need to figure out, what you want. And one thing that I think is hard to figure out, like you did it with freelancing, and I liked freelancing, but it was not what I wanted to do.
Which is fair.
Right. I was good at it and I liked it and I made good money. It wasn't something, I did it because I was good at it and I made good money, not because it was like what I love to do. But when I was doing it, I was still happy because I was good at it and I was making good money and I could work from home and there's lots of advantages to it. So I think the hardest part for people is figuring out what they really want to do.
Yes.
What do you really want to do? And that is very challenging. That's very challenging. And, I know it's probably a more male dominant trait, but I felt this way because I was a single mom a lot. It's that you're responsible for providing if you have kids, and making a switch when you have to earn a certain amount of money is terrifying in a different way. And feeling like you're a failure in any way is never fun. So figuring out what you want to do and going for it isn't always as easy as just saying, I'm just going to go figure out what I want to do and go for it. The figuring it out can be really challenging.
There's a difference between simple and easy. I say this to people because I'll sometimes say something and go, you make it sound so easy. I said, I never once said this was easy.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's simple though. It actually, I will say this, it's a simple process. You can simplify your process, but simple. Look, one of my favorite video games of all time is Tetris. It's a simple game.
Oh, it is, but it's not easy.
Oh God, no, not even close. It's not
Right.
even close to an easy game, right? But it's simple. It is super
Right.
simple, right? And that's life. Like the
Right.
reason, like Tetris is one of the most brilliant video games of all time because it is simplicity at its
Mhm.
finest,
Yep.
right? It's putting blocks together, building something constructive, just like classic music that just right like I can go do 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 do, and people will know exactly what that sounds like. They'll remember. They'll think of the blocks and the text, and they'll know exactly right what's going on. And the thing about that is right. The thing about that is that that's life. Life has that elegance to it. Yeah, it is simple. Figure out what you want to do and do it.
Right. But
Yeah,
that's
right.
not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. And like I said, I will never. I have never. The moment I say something is easy, right? Something is easy. You just run, right? Just run. Don't listen to me anymore. Just it's run. But if I say it's simple, it
Mhm.
probably is simple. Like, that's the thing. It
I think
probably is.
most things are, and we overcomplicate them also. I mean, on
Oh
a
yeah.
side note, I think we do a lot of that as in human nature that we don't need to. But yeah, I just and look, we're two examples. We're just two examples of two people that are moving towards what they want to do, or I feel like I'm living what I want to do, which is great. I'm living in an RV as a doula with no predictable schedule or income. And it's been great. I do also feel like when you start to do that, when you make your decision, this is what I want to do, and you're confident about it, regardless of how you're getting there, because you and I have done it differently, you start to get there.
Yeah. Oh, there's
It just starts to happen. I can't believe how fast and easy a lot of this was to make that once we made the decisions.
yeah, no, well, it's not just the decisions though, it's the actions, right? Right.
Yes.
It's the actions. Like I haven't gone into I keep forgetting to make this phone call to the immigration. And right. For example, right now, here's the thing, because I think deep down this is the thing I know on the inside. The moment I make that phone call, this is gonna go fast. Like this
Right.
is going to go very fast.
Right.
So there's also this, and this is a very real thing. Do you want this? Do you really want this?
Right. Because
Right?
it's probably going to happen once you start the train.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so you have to I mean, that is a reality. Like that is just a simple reality with whatever we choose to do in this life is you I say this as like we do exactly what we want to do always.
Right.
And some people really hate it when I say it like that because what I basically have said here is you're responsible for you. Doesn't matter what you have, what obstacles you have to overcome, what roadblocks are in front of you. At the end of the day, the life that comes from that is your choice by and large. So, what kind of life do you want to live?
And I think there's a lot of fear involved. There's
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
one fear of failure because you can like I always use I'm a runner, so couch to 5K, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling like you want to run a 5K, but you're sitting on the couch, the pain of sitting on the couch has to be greater than the pain of training for the 5K.
Mm-hmm.
So your fear of one has to be stronger than the fear of if the fear of doing it has to be less than the fear of not doing it. You have to hit a point where you want it badly enough that you're not willing to let the fear that you have about doing it get in your way. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
do it anyway. Going to one income for us it was awful for me. It was terrifying for me because I spent the last 17 or 18 years being either the sole breadwinner or bringing in enough that I could be the sole breadwinner and
Mm-hmm.
splitting it, right? And giving that up and cutting things out and not having control over my own money was horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Horrifying for me. Feeling like, hey, can I borrow this money that I'm not going to pay you back for this class that I have to take? You know, it was very difficult. It wasn't difficult because Dane was difficult. It wasn't difficult because of his attitude. It was 100% difficult because of me. He was game on. Fine. He's like, you're my wife. We made this decision. We'll figure out the money. Tell me what you need and we'll break it up into paychecks. We'll get rid of this. I'll work an extra Saturday. That he was showing up and doing it. I struggled with it, but my fear of that had to be less than my fear of not doing that. I had to want it enough to do it. And once I wanted enough to do it, I had to get out of my own way, basically, and not be like, I feel like I'm asking permission to my dad to borrow money for the car on Saturday. And
Yes.
that was my issue. Dane's like, you need to get over this. We made this decision. You're my wife. We made the decision. We cut things out. We're doing it.
Yep.
And it's been a hard 2 years of that.
For
me.
So I it's also going into the great unknown. So you're a woman used to being in control.
Right.
And
100%.
And the thing is, you were absolving quite a bit of this control to your husband, which was scary for a couple of reasons. One, your previous relationships, somewhat.
Correct.
Because you are right, because now you're giving this guy either similar, I'm gonna say similar, I'm sorry, or right, power than the people that did what they did to you previously.
Right.
And could you trust that? And that's a personal that I have an ex-girlfriend that I really care about, right? But the thing is, I realized this too during this time. She doesn't really trust me because every time something bad happens, she pushes me away. Right? Every time something bad happens. Now, if she trusted me, I would be involved, right? But she doesn't, so she pushes me away.
Right.
And it's not, again, if somehow she ends up listening to this, it's your choice. This isn't like me taking it personally or not personally. This is your choice. But it's me realizing, this is a realization on my part that I can't be trusted is basically what, right, at least for her. And it might even be and here's the other thing too, it might even be the correct decision for her, right? And this is something I have to, I don't think I'd hurt her, but that doesn't mean anything. Maybe in that trust I would. In this situation, right, it's different. You two are committed, you're married, you're happy, you're married.
Right.
Relationships are ultimately about trust.
Yeah.
If you don't have trust, you don't have a relationship. And that's the truth.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a litmus test to some degree with you because you're like, do I really trust this man?
And I did. And I did it. And it's been great. And it was simple. And we cut some stuff out and we made some changes. And moving into the RV made it even easier. And his new job went great. And still, I mean, even a couple days ago, I said, yeah, I'm going to need to pay for that soon. And with one more client, I can do all of it by myself. And he goes, yeah, but until one more client, you don't need to worry about doing it all by yourself. Like you're not doing this all by yourself. We're doing this together. Yep. And we do have a great relationship. So, I mean, it still is. You're going to have to be more afraid of sitting on the couch than training for the 5K, no matter what. The bottom line is that fear has to shift. You'll call immigration when you're more afraid of staying than you are of leaving.
Oh,
right.
And trust me, that day is coming. It's also like sooner than later. Like if not tomorrow, my deadline is legitimately Thursday. Tomorrow and Wednesday I'm at the hockey arena. So I gotta get this client done. That's just the way it is, right? I have to get this client done. Once the client's done though, I'm out of excuses.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's just the way it is. And again, it's going to be a process, and I know it, but I also know this: once this really gets rolling, right, it's going to roll, and like I'm not quite sure how it's all going to magically financially work out yet, but I also know this too: That doesn't really matter right now. It's going to
Right.
work. It's going to work out. And when it does, right? And when it does, I'll be out the door. And
Right.
and I'm going to a destination unknown. And that's the other thing too. When you're putting yourself in an unfamiliar space, right? Sometimes it's not even the fear of failure. It's the other fear, the fear of success. Because
Oh yeah.
here's the thing, right? Success is more of an unknown than failure is. Failure, everybody knows what that feels like or looks like in some form or fashion. But success, that no matter, because success doesn't look the same anytime you do it. It's different every time. And so it always takes you to this unknown. And
Yep.
again, where will that lead? Like me, I have some ideas of what I'm looking for. I do. I know exactly what I'm looking for somewhat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will I find it? Right? Maybe I find something else, right?
And I think it's the process that becomes fun too. It's not always the destination, it's the journey.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, it's all about the journey.
It's all about the
Like it's all about the journey. I always have this conversation with artists about perfectionism because everybody has like the perfectionist, right? The perfectionist messes up because the idea of this perfect, like you need to have a standard, sure, but the perfect standard doesn't really exist, right? And if you could find a perfect standard, that would mean that you can't change anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I want perfect? I'd rather be the best version of me I can be. That's a slightly different. Now you gotta standardize that a little bit, but when you get right down to it, that's a very different way of thinking than that perfect thing. That means that allows for differences, growth, the journey of who you are versus who you can become, all that stuff, right? If you have a good standard of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a good standard, like the best version of you, what you think that should be. I mean, you got to be a little bit more specific internally what that is. But at the same time, right, that's a very different mindset than being perfect, right? It allows for growth and change, discovery, surprise, adventure, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want. Like that, everything is the journey and where you end up.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. The big thought of the day, or one of the big,
That's a big thought. Big thoughts of the day. Big
yeah.
thoughts of today
Yay,
from Jenn
Monday.
and Josh.
Yes.
Yeah, yay Monday.
Yay,
Yeah,
Monday.
no kidding. I mean, I think with that fear, you have to set some things in. And financially, for me, what I did was kept track of every single penny that we spent on my business. And I created an LLC, which wasn't necessary from the beginning, but I wanted to. And now that I have that number, I know everything we spent the first from the beginning to now, right? Now I can do loan reimbursement without being taxed because I'm an LLC. Like in my brain, I did it. I jumped in, barrels blazing, and we did it. I stopped working. We went to one income. We cut some stuff. Within a week, it was done from that conversation within a week. And I started jumping into trainings and figuring it out. And in less than 6 months, I was licensed. So another thing I did though was to make sure I knew how much we took from our personal finances to put into this business. I claim them on my taxes here in the US, and I also kept track of them so I can reimburse that money without paying taxes on it again. And those were really important things to me because I was relinquishing control in a lot of ways. And it wasn't my trust against Dane. It was
No.
I needed to feel good about how much we were spending, feel okay with that, and then that I had a plan to pay it back because it's from our joint account. I mean, it's not like I took his money. This is our life that we created and our finances. But I think you can take your fears and figure out a way to make them not I was not afraid anymore of doing that, of depending on that and making those changes because we decided the changes together. We spread them out. I was very transparent about what I needed, when, how much, how that looked. We made that work together. And then I have a plan of repayment in my business. So, I think making the decision is simple, but not easy. And then you
Yeah.
have to figure out what are your fears and where are they coming from, and how can you make those reduced, or how can you make those less, or how can you make those okay, so that they're not, because if you're focused on that, if I was focused all the time on money in this example, and our finances and how it was affecting us, I wouldn't have been in the right space to forge ahead as much either. I think we get stuck on some of that. So I figured out a way in that situation that made it very comfortable. So it wasn't a
Well,
fear.
yeah. Well. I mean, listen. Having structure. I mean, when you're making a change, is not a very bad thing either.
No.
Like that like you're giving yourself some structure, which again, yes, there is a little bit of I'm in control kind of. There's a little bit of that, but it's more also you have a plan, because it's much easier to go forward on doing something if you have a plan of where you're going and how you're getting there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that. I totally it's something I have too.
Right.
Again, I'm looking at creating probably an American LLC
Oh,
myself,
good.
because, and the reason why American is because, again, uh, as I mentioned earlier, there are some things with the American system that you can loophole a little easier than a Canadian. God bless America. That's all I gotta say about that.
Which is
But,
great. That's great. And great.
yeah.
Utilize it. And I think that, but that's another really great skill to have when you're forging into the unknown and you're making changes, and you have fears or you have concerns or whatever, is look at the situation in the system and use it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, game the system. Game the system.
Game the system for sure.
Yeah, because the system is designed to be gamed. It's not designed to be. It's not designed to. Some of my friends are going to hate it when I say this. This system is not designed for an honest man, and I right. It's not. So understand the game that you in front of you, right? And understand that lots of people play this game the same way. And again, it's not. I didn't invent this cartoon world. I just play in it, right? That's it, right? Right. I didn't invent. I wouldn't have done it this way, but someone thought this was a good idea, and everybody seemed to go along with it. So shrug. Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, where I struggle personally, and I've never had to go under any kind of like government assistance program of any kind.
Right.
And sometimes and sometimes it's like sometimes you have to like looking back maybe there's a little bit of little too much pride in that on my own in a couple times where I could have. At the same time, okay, so back to the pandemic, we had a program up here called Serve, right? I avoided it like the plague. I actually don't regret that I did that, looking at some of the things that have come as a result of that. But then again, there's another part of me that goes, I could have taken the money and invested and gotten my money back and then some, in case I would have had to pay it back. So I don't know. Like sometimes I think maybe I'm just dumb, or maybe I'm just like, yeah, right. And I say it like that. You're laughing because you understand where I'm coming from. It's like, I just can't take that kind of. I just can't take that kind of freebie. Again, not knocking anyone that did. This is right. This is totally my brain damage here, folks. If you took it and used it to your advantage, God bless. Again, God bless you. You did it. I couldn't do it. I thought, actually, you know what? And part of it too, starting freelancing, I thought it would make me too comfortable. Right? Because if I had that bailout, it would have been very easy to sit on my couch.
Oh, that's true. And I think a lot of people prove that point.
Yeah, it would have been very easy. It would have been very easy to stay on the couch. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I was very smart about that, but about it in some ways. But it was just like, yeah, I mean, looking back, like, again, I have 10 rules. I mentioned rule 9.
Yes.
We vaguely, rule 8 is stay uncomfortable.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. That's a very important one. And that's the other thing. I mean, that's a really good one. We could have talked about that a lot longer. Just because you've decided what you want to do. You've done the thing. You took the simple thing. It's not easy, but you're doing it. Complacency doesn't breed anything real fantastic generally. I think staying uncomfortable.
Comfort kills you.
Yeah, I think.
Like that, legitimately, comfort kills you because you stop changing.
Yeah.
Life has changed. Like the one, like inevitably speaking, life has changed.
Yeah.
Ultimately, all the way until you're not here anymore, life has changed, right? And that is the world we live in. So, and I think actually, again, saying what I said earlier, I love that the world isn't perfect because that means there's freedom for everybody to change and become whoever we want. Like this is a playground. I mean, one other way of looking at this is life is a playground. It's not fair. It's mean. It's nasty.
Can be.
It's definitely got its dark sides to it. It definitely has dark sides to it for sure. But at the same time, it gives you a freedom while you're here. You can become anybody you want to be. That's the freedom of the world. And the
Right.
reason why that freedom exists is because the world isn't perfect. If the world was perfect, the world could not change. If the world could not change, you can't change either. Right? That is, I think, I think that's one of the most important like freedoms we have. And the beautiful thing about the fact that freedom, like that freedom to change, that also means by and large we can't fuck it up that badly. Like we have that freedom to just go, hey, I can make a mistake. I can do all these different things. And it's like, hey, it doesn't matter. I can learn, I can grow, right? And maybe at some point, this mistake I make now will become a blessing later. And that's a wonderful thing about this world. Um, but all of that is contingent on the fact that you're willing to get step into the world and change with it. That's what we're here to do, right? We don't start off as final products, and we don't become a final product until we're in the grave.
Right.
So until then, you must change. And if you don't change, right? If you're not changing, what happens is your world gets smaller. And then your world gets smaller. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to see almost like the end of your world is now this tiny, tiny space. You're going to ask yourself, how did you do that? But by that time, you're so set in your ways. Can you turn the momentum around at that point? Because the other aspect about staying comfortable is it's easy to stay there because again, it's a momentum thing. The longer you pursue a course of action, whether you're comfortable or not, the more likely it is you're going to go to the next step of the action, then to the next step, because there's a certain momentum that happens with it. And once that happens, all right, it's hard to get off the ride. That's why, like I said, the detached from all outcomes thing is so important too, because that's again, it's how we work. We make a decision, we stay there. We make another decision, follows the path of where we're going. Then we make another decision because it gets easier and easier as we choose a path to make those choices.
Yeah.
More big thoughts for today.
Man, the words of wisdom. You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I've learned all this the hard way, right? Like you learn all this, and so I try to save time. I wait for no one. I've learned again, my time here this time taught me this more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Wait for no one. If they really want to, they'll find a way, and if they don't, they will look for any reason not to.
That's true too. And I mean, I had to make a decision with my husband because we're in a relationship and a marriage. And actually, he was the one that started the conversation and encouraged it. It wasn't me saying, I'm happy, but I'm not fulfilled and I need to do something different. It was very opposite of that. And still, I don't have to wait for him. I mean, there are times or situations where you're making the decisions together. Because we have a great relationship and he was so encouraging, I wanted to not only do exactly what I wanted, but I wanted to do it really well because it wasn't just me that I was doing it for, right? I have a family and the goal was to get back to earning the income. So I think sometimes when you have other people in your corner cheering you on that are with you on the journey, it lights the fire even more. And that's a great thing.
If you're with the right people, absolutely. No, it's your relationships, the people in your life they're the ones that dictate your momentum, right? They dictate your momentum. I like I said, I'm looking like I'm looking long term for those people for myself. That I mean, I'm being honest about that. That's one of the reasons I'm in this journey. That doesn't mean I don't know if I'm going to find that anytime soon,
Right.
right? Right. I don't know. Like that's the thing. That's the unknown for me. Where do I belong? Because again, I've spent my whole life wandering,
Mm-hmm.
right? So again, I'm in one sense, I'm going exactly into my comfort zone because I'm used to going from place to place to place to place, right? But in another sense, I'm not because I'm looking for I'm not going to say necessarily final destination, but I'm looking for my happy destination, right? We'll call it like that, my happy
Mm-hmm.
destination.
Mm-hmm.
And because I want people that want the same things I want, right? And even if it's, again, it doesn't need to be a large circle, it has to be the right circle, right? And I don't want, again, I'm looking for adventure and connection. Well, that, again, people that don't want to hang out
Yeah.
are not going to fit that bill, right? But then again, who knows? I interviewed somebody a couple days ago, and we're going to meet up in Edmonton, in Alberta, in May. We're just going to meet and hang out. No plans, no expectations. All right. Maybe the one of the times we hang out, we'll go skydiving into Jelly Bean. She goes, you know what? She goes, okay, let's do it. I go, can we do that on the second time I see you? Not the first time. I want to get to know you better first, right? but I mean, that's the thing. That's a sign. It's like, okay, someone that's going to encourage you to be adventurous is probably a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Especially
Yeah,
if that's
right.
what they like, they understand that that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So that's the thing, right? I've learned this, and this again, all this shit sounds simple, right?
It is
It's a like
simple.
yeah, it is simple, right? But it's not easy. And like I said, it's a lifetime of mistakes, and it's a lifetime of learning, right? And not being afraid to learn, right? So but that's just it. So I'm amping up to go, and I'm amping up to do my things. It sounds like your business is slowly amping up.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you sound. I guess I'll ask the big question: are you happy? Are you more fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. Like, there's not even a question. I mean,
Yep.
I was in a situation where I gave up what I loved because of my situation and my kids, and I couldn't control that my ex-husband went to prison, and I certainly didn't want to do anything different with my kids. And when you do something like that out of necessity, I always missed it. So I thought that that dream was dead, really.
Mm-hmm.
And finding out, like, no, actually, we're at a great place that we could do that again. That was like amazing. And my daughter's also a doula and a breastfeeding counselor in Arizona. We don't live super close to each other, but so I was watching her for a couple of years live a life that I used to love, that I wasn't living anymore. And she'd say, "Mom, just do it again." And I'm like, it's not quite that easy. It's not just do it again. I mean, a lot would have to change for me to do it again. And my husband, who didn't know I was having those conversations, and that I get off and cry and wish I could just do it again, he saw something that led him to believe we should have this conversation, and here we are. So, yeah, it's changed a lot in the last since 2007. Things have changed a lot. I'm in a different area than I was when I was doing it before. And I have different opportunities because my life experience in the last 15 years has altered the trajectory. So I work with low income moms. I work with high risk moms. I work with moms who have suffered from loss. I take some of the toughest cases, and that's not what I was doing before at all. It doesn't look the same at all as what I was doing before. It's the same job per se, but I'm not doing it in the same way. I got to take what I loved and make it something that fits who I am now. And it is the best thing ever. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
No, and that's at the end of the day, that's what matters. So if I decide to come into Reno, Nevada, you want to do something like this in person?
Yeah. Woohoo.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I don't know when I'll get there because I have but my plan, and I can already hear laughter from upstairs. Right, I get my plan is to July. I'm doing a test run in Vancouver. Like I'm going to do a test run in Vancouver, kind of just work the bugs out, figure out what's going to happen on the trip, right? Kind of just see how it all plays out. Um, August, after When Words Collide, I'm planning to go into California first.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go. Then I'm going to go east. I am definitely going to go into your neck of the woods. I might possibly do something there. But there's a band in Colorado I'm going to hang out with
Okay.
afterwards. Then I'm going. I'm going east. I got to go to Pennsylvania, right? I got an approval from one of the websites to do a column at to get media passes at all the comic shows I want to go to. So from September onward, I'll be doing that.
Okay.
Gonna go east to see my family
Okay.
sometime, probably September, October, before it snows,
Okay.
because the beautiful thing about being on the road is you don't have to necessarily go where the weather's incredibly crappy.
Right.
That's kind of the plan. And September, October. I don't know, but again, and then it gets very blurry because I don't know. Maybe I go back to California for like the winter time. Go on the beach, surf up, you know, hit on women half my age. Why not? And, right, just right. And have a good time for winter. But it comes springtime. Uh, Again, depending also where my freelance work is and contracts are at too. Probably maintain a relationship in those vicinities as well, right throughout. But every so often, venture. I got to go to Maine. I got to see
Okay.
Miss Jenn Taylor at some point, right? I have to go. I got to go to Atlanta, meet some people there, and maybe in 2024 also maybe travel to England. I have a lot of people I know over there,
Mhm.
right? I don't know where it's all
And
going
you
to
don't
magically
have
go.
to. You will love it because
Exactly.
you're doing what you want, and it can shift gears, and
Oh,
that's
and
great.
in fact, I expect it to. Like I
Yeah.
do expect it to. Like that's the thing. I have an idea, but I also know this. Like again, that's why I said stop laughing up there because I know you are
Yep.
right.
Yep.
It's gonna. I'm gonna end up in a place. I'm going to end up somewhere. I I there. The joke would be here's the joke. I find what I'm looking for right away. That would be the joke. That would be incredible. But it
Right.
would be also be the joke, right? It's like you're kidding. It was that simple,
Yeah.
right? Right. It
I
was that
didn't
like
do this for so long, and that was it. Like,
yeah. So now that said, if I do find that place right away, I'm still going to travel a little bit because I still want to meet some of the people I've met,
mhm.
but it would obviously work out differently, a little bit differently in that case. But still, I'm going to travel. I'm going to see people wherever they may be, right? And then somewhere along the way, either when I get tired or when I know for sure, I'll stop, park somewhere, and just see where it leads. Like I said, I don't have a magical endpoint here,
You don't need
but I
one.
do know at some point. But again, when I finish this part of my journey, the next phase after that will be turning this into a studio show,
Mhm.
a full-fledged studio show.
Okay.
I know that I'll be I'll be an uber successful novelist slash graphic novelist slash like I already know what I want.
Right.
So the rest of this now is just the journey of making it happen. And if I sound confident in that, it's like, yeah, I know I can do it. There's no question, right? I can do it,
Right.
right? That's just where I'm at, and that's where I'm going to be.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm happy you're happy. So
Oh, isn't that crazy?
no, it's not that. I don't think it's crazy. I honestly, looking back, something I realized.
Mm.
I think the craziest thing in the world is that people choose to be unhappy.
Yeah, I do too.
Right? It's the craziest thing in the world. You're here once. That's it. So if you're going to be in an environment where this is it. I hope you've made the most of it.
Yep.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I think anything else is nuts. But then, what do I know? I mean, I occasionally talk to clouds and they talk to me back. I don't know. I know nothing. And in fact, the thing I know, I think I'm learning too, is I know less as I get older, and I don't care. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I know nothing.
100%.
Yeah, I know nothing, and I'm very okay with this actually.
Yep, me too. And it's going
Yeah.
to change.
So before we wrap up, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So, what do you want to promote?
Well, I'm a doula in Reno, Nevada. So the hard thing about promoting that is that I'm in Reno, Nevada. I'm in Washoe County in the US, and that is what I do. I do love speaking though. So if I could promote anything, I had stopped even trying to speak. I've done it a lot off and on. And then I had 5 different people ask me, and so I did. I speak a lot on getting through grief and loss. That's what I've been asked to speak on the last few times, and then specific breastfeeding issues. But actually, since I'm in Reno, Nevada, I think that's the easiest thing to ask for or promote is that, I love speaking when I do it. And so I love more opportunities for that.
So, how can people book you?
They just need to go on to it's doulainreno.com, www.doulainreno.com. And
Doula. Just spell that for me because
DOULA
Yeah.
INRENO
Okay. Dot
dot
com.
com. Yep. And my email's there. Email is the easiest way to get in touch with me. My phone number's there. You can text me. There's a contact form. I mean, like, you can go to any of the social media listed on my website and contact me there. Really not very hard to get in touch with me, but I love connection just like you do. And so people that jump on and ask questions, that's great. If you have a business where you want to do a collaboration, that's wonderful. So there you go.
All right. So this is Jenn Taylor Campbell, ladies and gentlemen,
Thanks
and
so much.
this is my advertising services. I make videos, audios, words, and pictures about your project or yourselves. You can check out the website right now for details on that. I will be launching a Patreon soon. As I was talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting ready to go on the road. I will be talking about this in a little bit more detail. Hopefully, within the next couple weeks. I am launching a Patreon page. What I do with the show after 1,000, you can be part of the process as I turn this show into half travel log, half interview show. It'll be definitely a lot of fun. So that'll do it for this episode. Just joshing. I will be back Wednesday. I got another one of my all-time favorite guests coming back next in 2 days. So for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time.